Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Everything is holy. I remember hearing it for the very first time. I thought it was my musician and she was a singer-songwriter, and she also led the music in my church in New Braunfels, and I thought she wrote it because she wrote a lot of her songs. I was blown away by that song, and then she told me later, Peter Mayer had written it, and just gorgeous. And it speaks so beautifully to what exactly we want to move into and what we want to give ourselves permission to experience, because this is our natural instinctual truth that everything is a miracle, everything is beautiful, everything is connected, everything is holy, everything is an interchange, an exchange of energy, of vibration, of sustenance, of nourishment, of connection in all of nature and one another. We are all miracles, and we just have forgotten that. We don't act like it. We don't remember it. We don't treat each other like that. And just in the moments that we can open ourselves to understanding that, we will have, I think, really ushered in a new age of living. Tonight I want to begin our series with, I know that many of you probably have heard now that Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a world-renowned spiritual teacher, Vietnamese Zen master, a Buddhist monk who devoted his life to teaching peace by living it, by dialoguing with it. And he passed away on Saturday. Jean Marie had suggested that we do this book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, when we discussed it back in the fall. Of course, we couldn't know that his transition would be so timely, I guess, for us to begin this tribute and also this teaching that we can take in. Thich Nhat Hanh is also known as they to his students. They call him that. It's his, it's a beautiful, sweet, I forget the word that we would call it, just a sweet way of saying his name back to him. I will use it periodically because I don't want to say Thich Nhat Hanh every single time. It'd be like saying Karen Tudor, Karen Tudor, Karen Tudor. So I want to do that, but I feel a little self-conscious because I was not a student of his. You know what I mean? There's a respect and a lineage in that. Although I have benefited from his teachings and I have read his books, some of them rather. Anyway, he worked for decades next to world leaders and activists for peace. He relates how he learned to stay open in his understanding of truth, always willing to be expanded and opened more. He says in this book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, he wrote, "To me, religious life is life. I do not see any reason to spend one's whole life tasting one kind of fruit. We human beings can be nourished by the best values of many traditions." Don't you love that? The banquet of life, the banquet of spiritual development and spiritual growth and spiritual practice. Why shouldn't we taste it all? Why shouldn't we do that? In Unity, we sometimes get criticized. How Christian are we? We practice Buddhist meditation and Hindu chants, and or are we appropriating things that are outside of our culture or whatever? I mean, you can get hit from both sides on that. But I always say we are practicing human spirituality, and we are human beings. And whatever it is that will change our souls, anything that will teach us, anything that will reach us, revealing that light or elevating our awareness or opening our minds, or above all, and most importantly, opening our hearts, because it is there in the crucible of our hearts that life changes. Minds change. You can try different things. This is a great beginning place, and it's important to understand to a degree, but there is a place where you reach a limit of what your mind can do until your heart is engaged and until your heart opens. And once it does, Katie, bar the door, because then you are lost in love. Love will just flow through you. You are a part of everything, and you really and truly cannot see it any differently than that. Thich Nhat Hanh said, he quoted the second precept of the order of interbeing, which was founded within the Zen Buddhist tradition during the war in Vietnam. This quote comes from the second precept, and it is this: do not think the knowledge you presently possess is changeless absolute truth. Avoid being narrow-minded and bound to present views. Learn and practice non-attachment from views in order to receive others' viewpoints. He wrote, "To me, this is the most essential practice of peace, is to recognize that everything we hold is partial truth. It is temporary. I like to call it in my life, I call it my working theory. This is my current working theory. This is the culmination of what I know now, trusting that I will, if I come up against some evidence that tells me differently, I'll expand my theory, I'll alter it, I'll change, I'll put it in there because we're constantly developing and changing. And that may be difficult because sometimes we really want to know solid, true, this over that, right or wrong, or good or bad. And we know as human beings, we know as mature adults, life just doesn't come to us that way. We can have a strong reaction. We can believe something is all the way right and all the way wrong. But I will tell you that no matter where you fall in that, you will always, if you are honest, you can find a set of conditions where that could change. You really can. You think not? I would never do that, right? Don't say that too many times. Life will give you an opportunity to see it otherwise. I'm just going to tell you that life itself is a beautiful journey, and it has pain, and it is difficult, and it's scary, and sometimes we have to do it by ourselves. And sometimes we lose those that we think we absolutely have to have in our lives. All kinds of things can happen, I know that. They have to me, and to friends and family that I love. But at the same time, you know that you are on a journey. You are always growing. And in the way that you can let go and recognize that you are also expanding your understanding, then it will be a lot less painful, to be a lot less resistant to hearing how someone else sees things. Reverend Michael showed on Sunday a photograph of Thich Nhat Hanh with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when they met and participated in the Fellowship of Reconciliation. It's an interfaith peace organization where he met many faith leaders and who were dedicated to peace at that particular time, including Father Thomas Merton and Father Daniel Berrigan. He says, the moment I met Martin Luther King Jr., I knew I was in the presence of a holy person. Not just because of his good work, but his very being was a source of great inspiration for me. And others, less well known, have made me feel that Lord Jesus is still here with us. Through men and women like these, I feel I have been able to touch Jesus Christ and his tradition. Now there is a great being that while he may never have been trained, and I don't know what his real history or training or background is, throughout the book it's clear that he has read the Christian scriptures or that he has familiarized himself with them. So he has learned that tradition. But as we know, when you're raised in something, it's a very different experience than when you may pick it up and study it from the outside, particularly if you have another worldview or another tradition. To be this much in touch with Jesus, he says, on my altar in my hermitage in France are images of Buddha and Jesus Christ. And every time I light incense, I touch both of them as my spiritual ancestors. I can do this because of contact with these real Christians who he's seen acting out and acting from their faith. He says, when you touch someone who authentically represents a tradition, you not only touch his or her tradition, you touch your own. Ah, what a surprise, huh? It's not different flavors taking us down different roads altogether at all. They are different entrances to the one same experience, the same place. We're all going to the same place. And I'm not talking about heaven after we die. I'm talking about the depth of our connection, of our understanding of the holiness and the beauty in each and every heart and soul. That when we touch our own, when we release the judgment, when we start letting go of it, we begin to not only feel it in ourselves, but when we can feel it in ourselves, we begin to recognize it in others as well. Whether they're acting like it or not, whether they would admit it or not, no matter what religion they practice, or whether they practice anything at all, no matter where their morality is at any given time. It has to do with an understanding that what is in me is in you as well. And there are times when I can glimpse it in your face, in your words. Christian legend has it that St. Francis spoke to an almond tree in midwinter. He said, "Speak to me of God." And it is said that the tree then spontaneously burst into bloom in midwinter. They says the reason that that was possible was because the only way the tree could speak of God was to experience its aliveness. For God is alive, and God is the life force within us. There's no other way to witness to God except by aliveness. In the foreword of his book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, Father David Stendhal, I know how to say his name. I'm subscribed to his blog. It's David Steindl-Rast, there we go. And he said that they uses this story to demonstrate the beingness that goes beyond words and theology to a shared human experience of the nature of God. And he does it a couple of times in the book, so we'll probably come across it again. But it's talking about our shared humanity and our shared divinity in equal measure. It's not an achievement to reach a certain spiritual practice or a certain spiritual expression. It is a time where we have just simply stripped ourselves of whatever inhibits or obstructs the glow of the divine light in us. Our common humanity is at depth. We are the Christ, and we are the Buddha, waiting to be expressed. But the layers of thinking and meaning-making and teaching from limited thinking separates us. Only our hearts can find the friend in the face before us. Only our hearts do that. Thay also says 100 years after the passing of the Buddha, the community of his disciples divided into two parts. He says within 400 years there were 20 schools in Buddhism. And since then there have been many more. Fortunately, these separations, for the most part, have not been too painful. And the garden of Buddhism is now filled with many beautiful flowers, each school representing an attempt to keep the Buddhist teachings alive under new circumstances. You see, living organisms need to change and grow. So Buddhism began 500 years before the time of Jesus. And over these 2,500 years, Buddhism itself didn't remain something attuned to the Buddha and following a single one way of doing, one way of teaching, one way of understanding, but multiplied and changed into varieties and different cultures. Because you see, when we have a truth and we as people attempt to now embody that, to live by it, to practice it, to teach it, to share it, to put it into our daily living, where do we put it? We put it into our culture. We put it into our experience. We put it into what it is that we need. What unique challenges did this community have that another didn't have? You see, so it takes, religion takes shape and form based on how it is we have learned to organize ourselves. And over time, those things have changed. And as those things change, the religions themselves splinter and try to adapt and splinter and fall apart. And then there are those who want to stay with what they've known and others who want to try something new. And there is the schisms that we've heard about. Christianity has its own. There's varieties of denominations. In 2,000 years, the only way Christianity could continue or still exist is because it has changed, because it's split, because it has become many factions, many denominations and ways of expressing. Faith traditions survive only because they change and grow and evolve. Even our unity tradition experiences growing pains now and has over the last 100 years of development, trying to evolve without losing itself. Splintering may be inevitable here too. If we want it to last, if it's meant to last, that's part of what we've seen happen. It makes it stronger. Thich Nhat Hanh also talks about authentic dialogue, and in the Buddhist tradition, we see it in the Dalai Lama, where there are dialogues, and this is a tradition, a practice of trying to understand another. It is an expression of compassion, an expression of trying to get into a deeper understanding of where you're coming from, how you see the world, what you believe, what you value, and versus where I land with it, and I'm able to express it to you, so that between the two of us, we enrich each other. We don't convert each other. We don't try to absorb each other. We don't try to have you, convince you that I've got the answer and come over to my side of things. No, we expand our understanding by accepting and seeing, as you see that, oh, from that side. Well, how we do it is we see this from this side. And now we both see much bigger, don't we? You have that experience. That's why you love to learn and love to experience new things. Because in doing that, you have a context that grows that enables you to heal and to teach in many different ways in your life. He says if we think we monopolize the truth and we still organize a dialogue, in other words, try to have a conversation with somebody, it's not authentic if we think we have the truth and that we want to convince them of it, right? We have to believe that by engaging in dialogues with the other person, that we have the possibility of making a change within ourselves, that we can become deeper. So it becomes an authentic drive to understand, because my growth edge depends on it, to understand where you're coming from, because you have a different way of seeing and being than I do. Dialogue is not a means for assimilation in the sense that one side expands and incorporates the other into itself. Dialogue must be practiced in the basis of non-self. We have to allow that what is good and beautiful and meaningful in the other's tradition can transform us as well. Our capacity to make peace with another person, Thay says, and with the world depends very much on our capacity to make peace with ourselves. We have known that. We have been told that. Peace starts here. We can't wait for conditions to align themselves and lay down and be quiet. We do think that, don't we? World peace? Oh, it gets quiet, doesn't it? All over. We picture the whole world, the globe, at peace. When would that beautiful day happen? And then I would ask you, how long do you think it would last? Because us humans have not assimilated. We haven't allowed the peace within us to be expressed in the world and to be able to see with eyes of peace. I suspect that when we can do that, we will discover that all along the globe has been just fine. It has been at peace. We couldn't see it because we weren't. He talks about interbeing, a way of knowing from the inside. Be still and know that I am God. Thay says, be still means to become peaceful and concentrated. He quotes this psalm, peace, as an example. In the Buddhist term, samatha means stopping, calming, concentrating. So it is about becoming still. And that knowing means to acquire wisdom, insight, or understanding. He says the Buddhist term is vipassana. Why can't I talk tonight? Vipassana, but he says vipassana. Oh, shucks, it doesn't matter. You get it. Insight meditation is what it's called. Looking deeply, meaning observing something or someone with so much concentration that the distinction between the observer and the observed disappears. The result is insight into the true nature of the object. That's true contemplation. And do you know what else it is? It is a portal to the infinite. It is the portal into an awareness of all. When we look into the heart of a flower, he says, we see clouds, sunshine, minerals, time, the earth, and everything else in the cosmos in it. Without clouds, there would be no rain. And with no rain, there would be no flower. Without time, the flower could not bloom. In fact, the flower is made entirely of non-flower elements. It has no independent, individual experience. It inter-is, he says, inter-is with everything else in the universe. Interbeing is a new term, he says, but I believe it will be in the dictionary soon because it is such an important word. When we see the nature of interbeing, barriers between ourselves and others are dissolved, and peace, love, and understanding become possible. Whenever there is understanding, compassion is born. In other words, when we can see, when the scales fall from our eyes, our hearts are not far behind. Compassion is not something we dream up, not something we decide. Compassion happens to us. It happens with understanding. It happens in the heart. Buddhism, he says, is made only of non-Buddhist elements, including Christian ones. And Christianity, he said, is made up of non-Christian elements, including Buddhist ones. We have different roots and traditions and ways of seeing, but we share the common qualities of love, understanding, and acceptance. For our dialogue to be open, we need to open our hearts. Set aside our prejudice, listen deeply, and represent truthfully what we know and understand. To do this, we need a certain amount of faith. In Buddhism, he said, faith means confidence in our and others' abilities to wake up to our deeper capacity of being and understanding. In Christianity, faith means trust in God, the one who represents love, understanding, dignity, and truth. When we are still and looking deeply and touching the sources of our true wisdom, we touch the living Buddha and the living Christ in ourselves and in each person we meet. The mystic Angelus Silesius called out, "Start blooming, frozen Christian! Springtime is at hand. When will you ever bloom if not here and now? Be still and know. Speak to me of God." Namaste.
Thank you, Reverend Karen. Perfect timing for that message about blooming. With us being in the middle of winter, we're actually having winter here in Houston.
Yes.
Time for some aliveness and color. I'm ready for that, too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what you're sharing is about mysticism, too. You know, I find it so fascinating how human being absolutely compulsively must explain the unexplainable.
Oh, yes.
You know, and we use religion to do that. But what you're speaking to tonight is a spiritual discipline of stillness that transcends religion. I mean, we use the vocabulary of Christianity and Buddhism to kind of create context for it and to put a cultural awareness on it, but ultimately it is a very private, very personal, inward experience. And I have no trouble at all imagining human beings throughout all of human history sitting and being quiet, being awestruck by sunset, being inspired by spring, you know, and that's part of our human nature and our natural connection. But there's also a discipline being spoken about tonight too, the practice of being still, and actively and deliberately tapping into that still small place, and small place, still small voice, quiet place. And I think it's an important touchstone for us to have. That's why I'm glad we have the meditation experience here in the satsang and our own private practice, because it is useful in traffic. It's useful in if we're in a confrontational situation, just to take a moment and reflect that. I know what it is to be still. Whether I can be wholly still in this moment, I can remember that it's possible. And then I can call forth that experience, and I can indeed feel a bit more connected with those around me if I can get there.
It's true. Well, we can also, being still is not posture, It really is the opportunity to practice enough that one can always access that stillness, that still point, that solidness. There's a solid feel to it that's deep, and I find when I'm doing this all over the place, and I really need to get my act together somehow, that really the breath is my first tool to bring me back into my body, because I'm usually not in it when I'm doing that. I'm in my brain and running around. But if I would just It doesn't matter almost what I do with my body. It doesn't matter if I'm still or if I'm walking. I can breathe into myself, and in that breath find that center, and in that place feel the calm, even when things around me are still swirling around. Things are still noisy. It's still loud out here. It's still messed up. It's still not organized. But there's something in me that, if I'm my better mind, if I can remember to come back into it, it's right here. It's always been here. It always comes. It's always there. And so being still is not anything to do with our physical being. It's a good way to practice. But what it really is to be still in the mind, to still the mind from all the popcorn thoughts and have only one thought. Only one.
Yes, my experience of that too is that giving the mind a break from the regular thought patterns, that at other times insights pop up, different insights than I was thinking before. And I'll share with you all one that happened recently, that I have a really sweet, cute Pomeranian mixed dog. When we got her, she was very quiet. That for about 2 or 3 days, and then she found her voice, and she's kind of yappy. And sometimes her barking just can be very irritating to me, and I notice I'm losing my patience a little bit with it, and decided to just breathe and like kind of let that go and be centered. And an insight came to me that we rescued her, and the insight that I received was that the way that she shows her love for us is by protecting the people who rescued her, by barking to let us know that somebody's outside, that there's an animal or a person that may be coming. And that's her way to thank us and to show love to us. And whether or not that's her thought process, that was something that I felt, and I thought, okay, I had to let go of that impatience and annoyance and that kind of thing to open my heart to her, to really get where maybe she's coming from, and it just felt right in my heart. I feel like that's one of the gifts of the practice is allowing other ideas and insights into experiences, even with those who can't talk to us.
Oh, that is so true. And you know, when we were talking about, I was mentioning about, Thich Nhat Hanh's idea about peace starting from inside of us, and that it's not going to be manifested outside visibly, and then we get peace. It has to be here first. But I would say that animals and all of the created world around us is already at peace. It's already harmonized. It's already in rhythm. It's in cycles. It is magnificent in its scope. It is terrible in its destruction. It is big in its, when fires come and when winds blow and waters pour and all of that. And yet in the dew on a beautiful morning, when the sun comes up and a breeze stirs, and in this moment, and every moment, it is in perfect balance and harmony. And it is us that run around looking crazy. We look crazy to our animal friends. It's like, why is she running around talking to herself? And she started in this way, and then she ran over here, and then she forgot something, and she came back, and it's like, oh, I just wish they could have such peace. I just wish they could slow down. I just wish they'd stop and just do one thing, that's it. I think the created world wishes for us what we struggle to try to achieve when we have it all along, if we just be still and know, right?
Yeah, nature is such a clear example of rhythms, things that repeat. Seasons repeat, day and night, and, rain, dry. And animals do that too, and human being does that. And if you accept the whole of it as a thing, and that there's peace and serenity and stillness inside the comprehensive movement of what nature and what God is, then it's just a matter of acceptance. But we do tap into rhythms, there are times to be busy, and there are times to be, to everything there's a season, that's almost a cliche. What I find myself toying with in thought as we're discussing this and as you were speaking, Reverend Karen, is I don't want to be so heavenly minded that I'm no earthly good. That's a familiar phrase. And I don't think that's what you're saying. But I think that there's a propensity for it. That if we just meditate and everything's still and groovy, then all is well, and things are still can be crazy around us. I'm wanting something that is sort of non-violence with a lowercase n and no hyphen. That it is an active thing, that I can speak from my stillness and from my state of peace and be a proactive agent in the world for this state of being that is sustained. It is dynamic and volatile and terrible and magnificent and all those things, but inside it, there's a continuity where I have access to my next moment. I'm not going to be buffeted around by my own thoughts even, in that I'm in my center, and so it too can be dynamic and flowing. I aspire to that. And that's a large part of what I use this weekly rhythm for, is to touch that place again and remind myself of that state of being, to live in that space.
Well, you're so right. That is the work. That is the practice, right? That is actually what our lives are really meant to be. And what would happen is that we would sort of drop out of all the thoughts that run us. It's not that we become mute or stupid or that we don't have a thought or that we have to sit and be in meditation. It's really that we become so conscious and so engaged and so present that we're not thinking about it. We are experiencing it. We are experiencing it and we are responding to it. But we're not reacting or thinking our way through it or trying to get past it or fix it or undo it or get it out of the way, right? That's what makes us look crazy. That's what gives us stress. That's what shortens our lives. It's really, like you said, really going with it and being in it. The Tao Te Ching often speaks in those kinds of terms about flowing like water, just going with it and do but not do, It's really, it's Zen in the sense that it seems so contradictory. But then at some level, that's the point. Get out of your mind and get into the lived experience. And in the lived experience, be still and know.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.